So, hello everyone, good evening. Welcome back to our Wednesday live sessions. Before we go into our topic today, which is healing through arts, and before we introduce our lovely ladies, our guest, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Nancy Hyari. I work with, or I am part of Bella and Bella production team as a chief financial officer. Bella and Bella production is a platform that is built to nurture strong community of women and empower women all over the globe. We have partnered with Race to raise awareness of coaching in education. It's movement for all parties to come together to have a meaningful, inspiring conversations, to accept differences, and raise awareness in the role of coaching in education. And now to our lovely guest, I say welcome, and it's a pleasure having you here. If you can, ladies, please introduce yourselves. Let's start with you, Annabelle. Hello.
Hello, I'm Annabelle. I'm half French, half Scottish, and I am a qualified language teacher in the secondary school system. I was qualified in France, but I'm currently working as an artist, organizing painting, creating the art, and also organizing the exhibitions and doing tours. I like to see my practice as an artist as a platform where I offer people to come and connect over the art, with the art, between themselves. And since I'm also a qualified NLP practitioner, it's a type of coaching which I'm sure some of you will have heard of. It's full of very practical tools to help with having the right frame of mind and mindset. And since COVID, because I did the art and I did the NLP in two separate places, and since COVID, I've had people come forward and ask me to start weaving together the role as an artist and that as a coach. So I now give workshops with the two woven together. I'm also a parent of 4 children.
That's really nice. Thank you, Annabelle. Edith.
Hi, I'm Edith Van Rinsberg. I'm an educator. I've had about more than 20 years of education experience, both in my home country, South Africa, and then the last, 13 years I've been working here in the UAE. And I mainly work with Cycle 1 students, the little ones from KG up to grade 4 or 5, which is here, it's about 10 years old. And using art in education is very close to my heart. So it will be a good discussion tonight, I think. I hope.
Thank you. It's good to have you back again in our live streams. So this topic, our today's topic is going to be about healing through arts, and this one is that I've been interested actually in it recently. So I would love to learn from you ladies a lot today. So let's start with our first. Let's first start to understand what is art therapy. What does it mean to have healing through arts? If one of you can start, Annabelle, please.
Okay, well, I think what's really interesting with art is the fact it's a form of communication. It's something that we look at in NLP coaching is the fact that communication is only it's 92% non-verbal. Think of it as being verbal, but so much is resonates through the way that we speak, tone of voice, body posture and everything. But there's a lot that goes on that's communicated from a subconscious place, subliminally. And I'm really, really interested in how, how we can communicate through the arts, because art is, obviously tonight we're talking about art as in painting and drawing, but art is also music. It's many different things, and I just feel that vehicle is amazing for communicating the interesting stuff, what lies below the surface of the water, which actually makes up a very, very large percentage of what motivates us, controls our emotions. And another thing that's interesting with regards to art therapy, we humans, we're probably the only species that use art consciously to communicate in that way, in that subliminal way, where we're communicating things that we can't say in words. And if you think about how important communication is, especially in the world of education with young people who can or can't or are trying to navigate with different means of communication, it's phenomenal if we can give them this way of communicating what's lying beneath the water, because sometimes they just can't do it with words. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does actually. I love that. That's why, like art classes are super important in schools. You find, students trying to reach out through, expressive arts. And as you said, it's not always painting and drawing. Sometimes it's just making shapes. Sometimes just a little bit of dancing. Edith, thank
Yeah,
you.
I've heard it's instead of saying like art, create art. I read an article mentioning art making, which is a really interesting emphasis. I found that, and that philosophical part of the human, that we all want to create something, and creating is survival. Because without creating, we couldn't have survived. Without communicating, first non-verbally, then verbally, there was no survival for us. So I think if you maybe have a very deep philosophical discussion about it, maybe they will come to the root that people cannot survive without creating. So that's very important, and why therapy and using art therapy is so powerful, that it goes so deep into the subconscious of a mind, and it links much deeper than just normal traditional therapy would in certain circumstances. So coming back to what is art therapy, I think it's just basically using art to support people in need that have need of therapy. Depression, it's been noted that it's very successful for people suffering from depression, anxiety. Often see it in when they are working with abuse of children. How successful that is, because small children cannot communicate so well verbally. Through art, they are able to communicate the situations.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really important point that you ladies made. Is about communication, and as you, Edith, said, sometimes like we human do need the creative. Even if we don't create, we go to artists to help us through life, whether it's music, going to art galleries or sculptures or whatever, and that soothes a lot of people going through a lot of mental health issues. And this is will be our next question: how can art actually prompt mental health? Annabelle, if you can please start.
She looks like frozen.
She's frozen. Edith, can you please start until Annabelle comes back to us? Thank
Okay,
you,
I
Edith.
read a very interesting quote that said that art, where traditional therapy engages only the mind and the emotions, the art therapy links through the body, the emotions, and the mind. So you're the physical part of it, which is very important, of art, and where they say where it's more beneficial to participate in the art therapy than just to observe art. Although observing art, like you mentioned, music, listening to music, or engaging with sculptures, or going to an art museum, this also has its own benefits. But the moment you are engaging with art and you get physically involved, you touch the brush, you touch the clay, um, that creates that link from your mind and your body into that art, and it's you cannot separate that anymore. And often I found like with depression, and people get separated, mind and body get separated in depression. Especially, I think people suffer and mentally suffer, then the body suffers. But if you can link the back together, the mind and the body, then it has a greater benefit for the treatment and the therapy that's happening.
Yes, that really is insightful. Let me just check on other Annabelle. Annabelle, can you hear me? I think she has a connection problem.
Yes.
Annabelle?
Yeah. I think, I mean, can you hear me, Edith?
Yeah,
You
now
saw
you're,
me?
yes. Hi.
I haven't lost the sound or the image. No, I wanted to make the point that scientific experts, they reckon that 95% of of our problems and our issues are not the issues and problems themselves. 95% of what we regard to be issues or stress or challenges, it doesn't come from the actual issues themselves. It comes from the thoughts about the issues. So, I mean, this is getting into the realm of, psychology more than art. But what I want to say about that is when you consider that amazing fact, it makes you realize that there is a big element of flexibility and there's a big potential for customizing. Because if that 95% is generated from our thoughts and what we are creating with our thoughts, then by the same token, we can go back in there and we can fine tune that. And that gives you an amazing platform with creativity. Edith, you mentioned earlier about the fact that we are, about the necessity that we have to create. And I really liked what you said about that body and the material connection, because we are becoming more and more disconnected with virtual and our screens and that inevitable pull towards that little screen that's called, smartphone, and what we can access. All of us, really. I mean, we are ridiculous sometimes. But what's interesting with art is it does get you back to some of those almost primitive, if you like, aspects. So on the one hand, you have this amazing creative potential, the platform of 95% thoughts that are causing the stress, and the fact we can go back in there and customize it. And then to do it with art, if we can get in there and we can customize it in a way that's also allowing us to override that disconnect and to reconnect with the materials, which I thought was such a fine point, then you can, these are two very foundational problems. Very foundational explanations as to why art could start to open doors and get people to shed a lot of their suffering, their mental health issues, that reconnect, and that revisiting of that huge realm of where they have created the issues in the first place. Why not go back in there and go back to the drawing board? And that's what I work on a lot with NLP. Actually, when I'm doing NLP without art, because I also give coaching sessions without any art, it's because I guess I'm an artist in my soul. A very large part of what people are creating are visuals, and I get them to to visualize and to use symbols and metaphors and to encapsulate a reference of empowerment, and it's already very artistic, but in their mind. So when you're doing that with art, then it allows you to then create it on canvas as well with that physical contact. And then you have the canvas to take away, which if you've done a job of representing that feeling of empowerment on canvas with colors and symbols on something two-dimensional, then you can have it in your home, you can have it in your kitchen or in your bedroom, just to remind you as a trigger of that feeling of empowerment. So you can start to see how you can get in there in so many different levels to recreate, that all-important mindset and that feeling of well-being. Yeah,
That's really beautiful. I do agree. Like, you take a part of you and just, give it to that painting. So you just relieve yourself from fears, anxieties, and sometimes it's really helpful with trauma cases where sometimes you can't talk about it. So you just draw, or maybe sometimes just, journal about it. And there's a lot of, as you, Annabelle and Edith said, there's a lot of science behind it, that how, creativity really helps people with mental health, with traumas, with, severe disorders, especially, the people who has panic attacks. And because it helps us understand ourselves, doesn't it? And that's like the base of it. So this is going to be our next question. How can it change the way that we see ourselves? Like, when we start doing these arts, how can that change, see how we see ourselves, and maybe hopefully in the future help us to deal with all our mental health or traumas. If
Well,
yeah,
I
Annabelle.
could like I think that I think what's key with mental health, one of the real key concepts is that mental muscle. To go back to what I said before, we are actually creating a lot of our issues. I think scientists will go up to 95% of the issues that are just compounded and created in our head. But we can go back in there and we can access and reconnect with that switchboard in our minds of where that mental muscle can be realigned and re-strengthened and redirected towards much more positive visuals. And it's a case of giving, and if you can give people those tools through art and through also the what an amazing world, creative world that art can provide, and it really releases, when I talk to people about the potential of tools they can take away with them to help them with well-being, the whole subject of coaching, if I talk to them about it in hard and dry terms of coaching, they listen, and but you can see a little bit of fear and reserve. But then if you start to talk to them about the art, it's almost like there's a portal there for people to go in and to feel. They feel. I mean, you said Edith, you put children in front of a paintbrush. If you put a lot of adults in front of a paintbrush, they can't hold themselves back. They might not have had the opportunity, but they just want to get in there and get. There's children inside a lot of adults. People are attracted to art like kids to a candy store, or like flowers, like flies to a light. It's something that really relaxes people and almost gives them permission to get in there and start to recustomize that platform, that database sort of where their thoughts and where their creativity is. Do you know what I mean? It's like almost like a portal. Like I feel art is a portal.
Yeah, I think it's coming back to scientific research that have shown that art and the creation or making of art actually occupies a different part of our brain than our logic and our language. So once we engage in art in any way, whether you have mental issues or not, if you are a normal person, it's also to your benefit to get engaged with art in any way or form, because it gives your mind that opportunity to switch to a different use, and like you say, use different muscles in your mind if you want to.
It's like going to a different universe, to be honest. Like you're going somewhere safe.
Yes, and that's why they mention or recommend that you don't listen to music with the words, but just sound, because you want to engage that different part of your brain that is not logic and language based. So coming back to that really also enforces the well-being of your mind, to just make that switch. We talk about the mind switch, and that's a physical switch that happens.
Yeah. And it's almost like some people they don't take the time to do that, or they don't give themselves permission to do that. So to put it into a formal context, like art therapy, or you might want to call it something different, creative flow, or creative compass. I've played around with different names for these workshops I've given, and it allows people to step into something they wouldn't normally do, and then that they reconnect with something which a lot of the old-fashioned methods of education have shut off. I mean, you were saying yourself before we went live how art has been phased out, and I feel so strongly about that. I feel that everything has become so quantifiable, and it's become, a lot of things have become quite rigid, and they have to kind of have some kind of quantifiable justification for existing. But that closes people off, and then you give them that permission to go into a place where the boundaries are much more fluid and much more flowy, and where they can reconnect with a place inside them which they may have forgotten about or never have discovered. Then it's amazing. It almost speaks for itself. But people go into this flow with it, and you can start adding other modalities. Like I'm exploring right now, I'm actually working with a sound therapist about how we could add some sound healing alongside the flow of these colors. It's all energy at the end of the day. It's just different frequencies, and scientists can explain that better than me. But at the end of the day, it's tapping into different energetic frequencies, isn't it? Whether it's sound or color, does something for you that we have lost our connection to, and we have to be careful not. I really believe very strongly for the sake of our mental health and our children's mental health, we have to really find a way to bring it back into the space that our kids and our young people are hanging out in. It's so takes you places and does things for you that you can't quantify, but hey, it's really important. I feel quite passionately about it.
Yes, I think you're touching on a very dear point and a tender point for me as well. As testing and quantifying things is not the end all be all of things. It shouldn't be, because we as human beings are more than just a measurable fixed thing. We are so much more than just what we can measure. So subjects and it should not therefore be based on measurable and achievements, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah,
and everybody should be able to achieve master status in art to experience the benefits of art.
Yes,
so
I mean, exactly. How would it be if we were to emulate a universe around us that represents what we give importance to in an education system, where we removed music from the radio, we removed colors from the clothes, and you know what I mean? I mean, these are there. We need them to survive. We need them to flow and to actually interact and to be in fully functioning mode. And if we remove the permission for people to do it in a way where they can just, if we reduce it to 1 hour a week, which is what you were saying is all that's left in your school where you work, then that's
very sad.
not right. No, it's not right. I mean, we parents, I think, play an important role in making sure that our children can access it in different ways. My kids have done the French education system, and they're not very good at keeping art up and running in academia. But they're very good at providing it on the sidelines, and therefore the French are pretty connected with art as well. But I don't think it should be up to the parents. I think it should be up there with other subjects. That's my opinion.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. If I just look at the joy and the peace that students experience in their interaction with art, because in that art space, it's non-judgmental. It's nothing is right or wrong. They can do what they feel
exactly
for them.
Exactly.
It's not like a math problem that there's an answer and they can have it either right or they have it wrong. They apply and do with the materials how they want, and it reflects on them however they see it. And that old adage that beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's so appropriate that what for me is beautiful is not necessarily beautiful for you.
Exactly. That's a lesson in itself. Subjectivity versus objectivity. Yeah.
Exactly. And if that's not true, then we would have a very boring society.
For sure.
Beautiful conversation, ladies. I'm enjoying it. I feel like I'm on the receiving end of this passion that you ladies are talking about. I'm really loving this.
I just wanted to throw in a little, because we're talking about the importance of art at school. Yeah. I've mentioned this in the webinars that I've given before, but I have one of my favorite rock bands. Okay, so I listen to music, and it's a group called Radiohead. You've probably heard it, even if you've never heard of it. It's up there in the groups that you hear on the radio. It's one of the most famous bands in the world. And the lead singer, who I think is each album that this singer creates. So we're going into the art modality of music here, but that's art as well. Mm-hmm. The lead singer wasn't that academic and didn't do that well at school. Mm-hmm. You can find his interview on the BBC if you're interested in the archives, Radio 4, and he talks you can really hear this message, the truth when he's talking about it. But he says at school, he felt he didn't understand. He just didn't do well. It didn't come easily to him. But with art and with music, he just loved it. He was captivated by it. And his teachers, he had 2 teachers, he didn't name them in the interview. He said they identified the strength and they gave him validation for it, which to me is key to many, many different types of coaching, the validation, the identifying each person's unique blueprint, like a snowflake has its own unique blueprint, and helping that person connect with it and validate it in such a way that they will then shine from within and then deal with the things that they're not that good at. I mean, I've been through this with my son who school didn't come naturally to him, but really validating something like art in a person. So he had this done for him thanks to a couple of teachers. And he said, matter of fact, if I had not had that validation at school, I would never have got to where I am today. I would never have created this music. We wouldn't have this singer and this amazing group to listen to. If you don't know the group Radiohead, go back to some of the earlier albums. Absolutely incredible. So that resonates for me with my connection to children and young people with art. It's the importance of, it doesn't have to be about art. It can be about many different skills, but it's one of the ones that's neglected. And it's allowing people giving people the full palette of being able to express themselves, not just, giving them academic recognition because they're good at maths and good at writing and good at fitting into
the box.
These very quantifiable ways of measuring them. I mean, to have something much, you know what I'm talking about, to have something much broader, much more fluid, that they can be validated on. And how important is that, really?
And I think it makes just for a more all-rounded person better than just a person that's rigidly academic.
Exactly.
Now, I speak from personal experience growing up. I was very academic, did well at school academically wise, but I also was very arty, and my parents supported both areas in my life. And I think that made me as a person much more well-rounded, much more stable, and able to handle more situations, I would think, than an old person that was just one or either.
That's a very good point. Yeah, having creative resources inside.
Exactly.
I do agree. Some people would do better academically when they do, let their arts and creative goes, because, as you said, it helps you, deal with because schools does have its anxieties and stresses, how many marks you want to do, being good at subjects. So it helps you to soothe that. So sometimes it makes you do better in the academic, or at least, do. No, you don't have to achieve the A's, but at least you can do, well in school. For me, it was actually the other way around. I did really paint well in school, but my teacher kept thinking I cheated. So after that, I've never been painted, but I went back to it, after, gone to college, understood that, sometimes, but that's like how schools and teachers sometimes influence you, especially when you're kids and teens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
they do have a huge role. Like sometimes I think, what if instead of she said that, she actually encouraged me, it would have been a different result than what actually happened. But now I'm trying to get back to it, so let's see what happens.
That's what you're doing, Nancy. Yeah, it's that all-important reconnection with the the switchboard where we've created all these, ideas and schemas of we're good at this, we're not good at that, and it's about going back in and updating them. A lot of the time we don't update them, and it's a shame. These false or these distorted or non-representational, beliefs are just running in loops, and we need to reconnect with them and update them. So that's another.
And while you ladies are talking, I'm now remembering a little bit, like every time I had a transitional period in my life when I'm going from somewhere to something, we're very stressed, I usually actually go to arts, whether it's knitting, crocheting, or even a little bit of painting. But I usually, go back to arts, and always help me through that. Like I've never thought about it, but now when you ladies are talking, I'm like, maybe subconsciously I knew it helped me out, and that's why I always went back to art when I had a stressful period in my life. So that's really good to know. So by this we can go to our well-being and mindfulness. So how can it be a tool? Like what can we steps take, or how can we be more mindful with art and maybe reach our well-being? Because as you just said, it's not always, we don't have to have a mental health or a trauma. Just art's like everyday thing to help us with everyday life, right?
Mm.
I think because in being mindfulness, the idea of mindfulness is that you are conscious and aware in your situation that you are in. So if you are painting, you are making conscious decisions about which color you will use, which brush stroke, which brush you will use. So it's being aware of the decisions and the thoughts. Why will I use this color? I want to achieve this effect. So I'm going to use this rather than this. It helps you in aligning and being present and being mindful of what you are doing. And that can then overflow into your daily life again when you are making decisions, thinking about, why am I saying this? Is it the appropriate thing for this situation? Maybe I need to think about this again. So being conscious and using that mode of what you are doing in art to your daily life can help you in your own mindfulness in the rest of your life, I think.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
like now I just realized something. When I went back to painting, now I see the sky better. Like I take a moment now to
Yes.
look at it and see the different colors that it makes in the morning and the sunsets and the evenings, and even like the trees. Now I really, took a moment, not like before, like I would just go park and sit and that's it. Oh, beautiful trees, flowers, or whatever. But now, like, I take a few moments to appreciate the nature. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I guess there's a lot of the art, like you're saying, Edith, you're kind of trying, depends what kind of art you're, whether it's abstract or figurative, you're seeking for the colors which are going to contribute towards that composition, the complementaries, building up particular shades of blue or green or red or orange. And it really reconnects you with the absolutely incredible world of what's naturally out there with regards to color. Like you're saying, Nancy, that's a good point. The clouds, the flowers, and that's a big part of mindfulness. We walk around taking that for granted far too much, including the connection with the body as well, how we function and how we take that for granted. But I'm also very aware with my techniques. If you look, I mean, I don't have examples that I can flash onto the screen, but I use a very flowing technique. And when I do my workshops with NLP, one of the things that we work on is allowing the attendees to really get that pigment and water flowing on the canvas. I actually prop the canvas up at an angle, and we're spraying water and adding pigments, and they're flowing. And the amazing thing is they have to get out of the way. They have to kind of relinquish the control to a certain extent. It's almost like a metaphor for some of the most beautiful things can happen with color fusion and the way that the paint is, because I also put threads on this, my particular technique on the canvas, so the paint is diffusing and it's actually being generated through the threads, and it's drying in a certain way, and you even get these beautiful organic watermarks combined with color. You're very welcome to join one of my workshops if you're interested, by the way.
It's really fun.
But people are amazed how they just have to sort of let it happen, and they can't get in there. It doesn't involve that many paintbrushes, and
I feel it's mesmerizing. That's how I
it's a
feel.
lot to do with letting the color do its thing, and that is mindfulness in its very act. Getting out of the way, not trying to be in control, letting it happen, realizing sometimes it's the beauty of just standing back and enjoying the process, not trying to imagine how you want the result to be. Isn't that's a metaphor for how we should live our lives a lot of the time. So that for me is key in one of the ways to help people, to remind people that beauty of process and the journey, and not what's the destination going to be like.
Exactly.
Well, what happens if it's not this or it's not that? No, and I find art is an amazing vehicle for that.
I think that's why art therapy is also so successful, because it doesn't focus necessarily on the end product. It's about this whole process of, like you say, the different,
Exactly.
depending on what technique you're using. I did pottery at one stage as well, and that whole process of the treatment, the kneading of the clay to get it malleable, throw it in on the wheel, and molding it in the wheel, or just using slabs and doing it in that way. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
I've never done it with the pottery wheel, but I can only imagine.
Because it's with the hands, I feel like it would be satisfying.
it is like, just getting in there, and that coming again, and just releasing that stress, because, and whereas, like, not necessarily fine arts as much, but crafts can also be very beneficial, like woodworking, and ironworking can be very, very beneficial for people, to release excess energy,
Yeah.
rage,
Especially
anger,
like the
stress,
wood carving, you need
anger.
strength. So if you're angry, you can't take it on the wood.
Not in
Yeah.
that way, instead of being in a negative. So it transforms that negative energy into a positive energy, which is hugely beneficial for human
Yes.
beings.
The
You
knowing
know,
how to
yeah,
switch negativity into positivity. If we could only navigate with that, in a way that we could really make it our autopilot, it would change so much. We humans are just a lot of the time so unaware of how we can create and generate positivity into our reality. I
Yes.
believe. I think that's one thing we're here to learn, and I think that art is a metaphor for that, really.
very important.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like once you've done something, even it doesn't look great, as you said, because the end result is not important, but you feel satisfied that you made this. Like you feel proud, I made this.
Because
Yeah.
Art
art
gives
says
you
that,
like a little bit of confidence and boost that you can do
Yeah,
something.
and it gives you something that you can tangible that you can take away and connect to, and the process sort of kind of almost you can almost see the imprint on what you take away.
yes,
Yes.
because there before there was nothing. Now I have made this thing.
Yeah,
I myself, with my two hands, might not be perfect, but I have made something.
yeah, something
Yeah.
unique. It's
Hmm.
like the impact that you can make with that that blueprint that you have inside. I think art is a metaphor for how we can express ourselves and how we can create our roadmap in a much more positive way. I think we can really use the process of art to bring people back onto that way of reasoning and that way of perceiving their life. I've seen it in a 3-hour session. I want people from my workshops to come back and tell me how they're doing. I give them a little printout of how to use the mental and their little canvas, the actual physical tools. But I don't. I need to go and find them and get them to give me an update.
Another update. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I do. I can imagine. It's an outlet, like to get your emotion and just feel calmer and better.
Yeah,
Um,
an outlet, a platform, a toolkit, a pointer. It illuminates an alternative way of navigating. It reminds us, and it doesn't sort of it doesn't teach. I think we know it already and we use it already, but I often say to people that this toolkit I'm giving them through the NLP and the art, it's like a comfort blanket. It's like you're creating a reference, with the color and the symbol that they add to their canvas or in their mind. It's a little reference that they can take away and refer to and have, and continue to customize with other positive references. Yeah.
yeah. So as you
Time
said,
to
like
I
even
need
when you're
to.
done with it, showing it to people is actually nice as well. If you have that support team, I know I made this.
Yeah.
Can
I
you know?
always I bring in my art pieces because I actually discovered that I'm using art therapy in my art. This was during COVID, giving art tours. I actually
Yeah.
discovered that I was doing it, that what I was expressing on the canvas was actually my own therapeutic reference points, whether it was a bird or a sailboat. And that was where I said, right, now I really have to start running workshops and showing people this.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's amazing,
If
amazing.
you look at so many of the famous artists all through the ages, you'll often find works in their repertoire that is a reflection of their own emotional states at certain times in their life. So the idea of art therapy has always been there with us. It's just been labeled now as art therapy, but we have always find as human beings ways of dealing through creativity with our emotions. So it's not a
yeah,
brand new idea.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
more, I think we are starting to use it more thoughtfully and with
Mhm.
purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it's coming in. I mean, look at all the different sort of healing modalities, therapeutic modalities, which are coming to the surface in the forefront right now. I kind of hang out in that world here in Abu Dhabi. There's a lifestyle hub that's just opened. The bridges next to the aquarium. I gave an NLP and art workshop there 2 days ago. There's the body tree. There's the Manarat. I'm creating a platform in May, and you're very welcome to come, by the way, if you're interested in art and therapy, because it's going to be an art exhibition for mental health. So I'm not using this platform to promote it. I'm just sharing that we can continue these conversations. I'm going to be giving workshops, and actually, by the way, I'm encouraging schools to come and have tours. I'm going to be giving up my time to explain to some of the children. I have already with Cranley, because we're just across the road from Cranley at the Manarat. But if you're interested in connecting, it would be my pleasure to share this with your
Please do.
students.
It's really amazing. So please do share it with
I'll talk
us.
to you more about it on the email. And I'm saying this as to anyone else who's listening, in fact, that this platform we're creating in May is all about allowing the arts back onto that onto into that place where we can reconnect, we can come back from being so virtual. We have had to be so virtual over the past 2 years, and just if they want, we're going to be giving workshops too, and getting our hands dirty, like Edith was saying, reconnecting with the paintbrushes, and so yeah, feel
But
free to
talking
reach
about
out and connect.
virtual, interesting enough, I read an article to say talking about I'm not myself not very into virtual art, but um, being so virtual the last couple of weeks or 2 years, I mean, with the COVID and stuff, that it's becoming a more and more also a vehicle for expressing and in art therapy um, with more freedom because what you can create in the virtual reality, you might not be able to create with your pottery or with your brushes. The
True.
effects you can create is so much wider that
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah. You're right. In
stimulates.
fact, sorry
Amazing.
to interrupt, but what have you like NFTs, for example,
Yes.
or yeah, virtual art. You mean?
Mm,
But I still prefer the old way when you do things with your hand.
So do I. I'm
I
biased.
still hang them anywhere in the house. I still like, and every time you look at it, I made that.
Maybe we're just old-fashioned.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Okay, so because we're running a little bit out of time, so let's share two tips before we start taking a few questions from the audience. Let's share make mistakes and how we can limit language to have these tips as art-based mindfulness. If you want to start with make mistakes.
I think that in art therapy or anything you are doing in normal, if you're just practicing mindfulness in art, um, making mistakes, and like we said mentioned before, it's about the process. It's not about the end product. Okay, I tried this. Okay, it doesn't look so good this time. Maybe next time I can use something different. I will use a different color or a different medium to express it. But it's not giving up and not just doing it once, Nancy,
I do
but
need this.
going back and trying again, trying a different thing.
Yeah.
Just it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I
That's
said,
what I'm trying to learn.
right?
That's what I'm trying to learn.
It's
I think
okay.
you're.
Don't
it's a
apply
really
to
good
my life.
question.
It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's an important question, that one. And I mean, I'm a language teacher, and I think that 50% of the challenge in learning a language is the daring to just get out there and try to start piecing your words together, and to remove yourself from the fear of making mistakes. And I think with art, it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and when I have my workshops, people come, and my workshops are open to people who don't have any art experience, and I always have my little spiel at the beginning about the importance of, just enjoying the process, like you were saying, Edith. And there are tips you can give. Always start small. Line up, buy inexpensive canvas, smaller paper, line up. I once read a book about watercolor, and there was even the instruction in the book about the teacher was saying he always paints with his blocks of watercolor pads, the ones he hasn't used yet, in the background, because it's like it gives him almost permission to mess up and tear that out and start again. And removing the fear, knowing that you can do that, actually helps you relax, and then you don't need to rip it up and start again. So there are these tips that you can give about, start small, or if it's paper, make sure you have the paper in the background, even in your field of vision, so you can just go to the next piece of paper. And then also to release the necessity to be in control, to actually allow. I find the fluid techniques with art are really good for that, just allowing the different pigments to fuse together and to just watch it. And this is where I'd love to bring the sound healing in, and just allow people to slow down with the way they're doing it, and just connect with the way the pigments are modified. How pigments, an infinite number of different tones and colors. Just watching in the fluid technique how the blues and the greens can form these moody olive tones and greys, and not to think that it has to be bright green and bright yellow or bright blue. And what about these lovely moody secondary colors? They're really necessary.
I'm
appreciating and enjoying the moment. Like whatever comes, just enjoy it. Yes, Edith, sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry. I was just saying to that. And, for me, I practice not art so much at the moment. For me, I'm very into cross stitching at the moment. And it always amazes
me. We do a lot of things that are great.
how you can actually paint in the end with these different colors or threads. You have a gray here, and if you put this gray next to it, it's totally different. But once you've put it into the work, it changes the whole image. It causes a shadow, and it creates this wonderful images that is created through that, and that's what talking about making mistakes. That's so great with the cross stitch. You can always unpick it and start again.
That's true. And I always second it about limiting language. Do you want anything to add to that, Annabelle?
So limiting language, was that the one about how with art you are able to communicate beyond verbal? Yeah, well, it's kind of what I was saying at the beginning, but it's a very important point, so we can quickly repeat that one. It's the idea that we've spoken on several occasions during this evening about not having the boundaries, not having the quantifiable. How about communicating something more subliminal, that's much more, emotionally charged, much more important, much more connected to what our emotional barometer is, and at the end of the day, we might say something but be thinking something totally different. But with art, it's allowing what's much more authentic to come forward and to shine. And I think, I love that about art, really.
Yeah,
and I think it also comes back, Nancy, to that physiological thing about your brain, talked about before, that language and logic is in one part of your brain, and your art and your creative part is in a different part. So when you disengage one and you engage the other, it brings it to the fore. Whereas when you still have your language active, when you are engaging with creativity, it can maybe limit the creativity a bit. So if you look at it in that part, in that way as well.
Yeah, making your
Like
approach more holistic.
instead of,
Yes.
talking about it, just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
enjoying. That's really
Yes.
lovely, ladies. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it was very useful for me in a personal level. So we're just gonna take few comments and questions from our audience. Our first question is: does coaching for autism specialists require special skills that differ from working with teachers who teach regular students? You can see the question on the screen. I'm not sure if you.
Awesome question.
Oh, see.
Hmm. Well, I'm not an expert on autism, but I was actually in my studio this morning painting from the May exhibition and listening to somebody speak about art and autism and talking about how autism is a domain where that's really interesting. The usual modalities for communication can be very compromised depending on where they are on the spectrum. So, so art can be an amazing
Vehicle.
amazing platform to communicate, and it can also be a way for them to shine because they can discover their abilities in ways that they may not be able to master with the quite restricted tools of language or numbers. You know what I'm saying? It can be. I don't know if that makes sense to the person that's asking the question.
I think for again, it depends on the scale where the student is
Where
of
the
the
spectrum of
yeah,
autism,
the
yeah, they
spectrum
fall.
of where the student
Yeah.
is. When it's severe limitation, yes, I would recommend that there is somebody that have a bit of more experience working with students with autism, because they have a better understanding of the students' limitations and abilities.
Yeah.
That they want not inadvertently cascade a student into a episode of, as we know, sometimes autistic students are very sensitive to either sounds or touch or certain things, that if they are aware of these situations they can better deal with those, whereas ordinary teachers might not be as well versed as a person that has more experience with
Mm.
working with students like that.
And today I came across a story. It's like by chance. Like when I read this question, I like how coincidental this is. So I was like on Instagram today, scrolling, waiting for iftar. So scrolling through these stories. So one of the stories was about a guy who has a kid as an autism, and they were visiting a gallery of another guy who's, I think he's in mid 20s or late 20s, and he is on the also on the autism spectrum, and he had an art show because like he said, like he draws in black and white, and he said that the arts that he makes right now is what helped him to connect to the world and to people. And he talked like how people appreciated his art, they validated it, as you ladies mentioned before. They encouraged him, and now he really draws really nice drawings, and he has a gallery, and even the father was like, I was really happy seeing someone with an autism spectrum doing this, because it gives me hope for my child, and it gives a message to the world that even autism children can do something with their life, and
It's
shift
about
that. Yeah.
Yes,
validating that unique
Yes.
blueprint in the individual, whatever it might be. We all have our unique blueprint. We're all snowflakes. We're all different. We're all,
Yes.
and we can make an impact. And if you can use art as a way for that person to express and be validated, then yeah,
Yes.
I think that's really important. But I would agree, yeah, you definitely need to have specialists if it was quite severe autism. Because
Yes. And we have another comment. I agree with you that art healing is a successful method because it gives children the opportunity to express what they feel without suffering. I think we can all agree to that.
Definitely, definitely for students. And if I think back to my own childhood, the most vivid memories I can have, I have, is when I was on my fifth birthday. I received a box of, those days it was plasticine, not Play-Doh, plasticine, and I could spend hours with that, making things, remaking things. So it's just, again, that whole experience of working with art and things, creating things, that was so beneficial.
Yes. We have another question. How can art be used to influence or enhance self-perception and self-confidence?
I think that comes back again to that validation, and just that self confidence. Again, saying before there was nothing, now I've been able to create something. There's something that I can say, this is what I did. I did this with my own two hands. That can enhance your self confidence. And look, I can do this. It's not that difficult. Yeah.
And then
And
you can also
that in your life as well. You challenge yourself, so you can challenge yourself again.
And there's a really interesting tool when you combine NLP coaching and art together, where you have the self-concept, which is all about going in and identifying and recognizing your strengths and encapsulating them. It's a tool that I use. It's foundational in just about any NLP that I do, and it's about really connecting a true, authentic strength into a way that the person can make it into something that they can just access. And the way I do that is through a symbol, and that symbol can be created on a canvas. You can actually project that reference of strength and positivity and validation and recognition. Because let's face it, we all have this database which is so cluttered and full of negative and positive all mixed together. So it's about doing a bit of spring cleaning and organizing it and just homing in on that strength to validate it, turning it into the symbol, and then to really help the person in a workshop or an art session project that onto a picture or a canvas, or I guess it could be also three-dimensional with plasticine, and then to have it as a visual, so they have it in their mind as a visual that they can access at any moment, and they can have it as a reminder on their kitchen wall or bedroom wall. So that's the way that I use art to help really get that edge with self-confidence and self-perception, to answer Gina's question.
Yeah, and Annabelle, can you please elaborate more on the symbol that you just referenced?
Sure. So I have something that I use in NLP. Some people that have been listening to me talking about NLP over the years know I have a model. It's called the resilience model. I was doing it for a long time on its own without the art, and it's centered, to really put it into a nutshell, to summarize, it allows people to shine a light on their database to quickly and respectfully identify an authentic strength, to bring it to the surface, because we all have them. It might just be doing something very simple, or it might be something like a sport or an activity, or it might be just a place or a person. It's something that you can do that puts you in your flow and makes you feel invincible, that nobody can take away from you. And we all have it. Some people need to be led and coaxed into finding it. It might be giving your child a hug, making somebody you might just be excellent at making somebody feel good when they come into your house. Or it might be an instrument, playing, singing, or sport, or it could be a place as well where you like to walk. A place it's making it into a reference, and then one step further, making it into a symbol. So I have this for myself. I use it in my art a lot. So I have that place of where you don't feel bogged down, and you have a perspective, and I use birds. It might be, I have one which is where I feel connected to one of my values, which is freedom. So I use kites. And so people can be coaxed into finding a symbol like that. And then if they can, in the art process, I've spoken about the fluid and the fusion of pigments. And if there's a last final step, they can add a symbol to that. Then they can take it away and have it as a trigger, as a visual anchor. We call that in NLP. And then, it can be on canvas. And it can also just be in their mind, because, hey, when we're walking around navigating, we're faced with a challenge, and we need that extra confidence. Sometimes it's nice to have it at your fingertips in your mind. So I give it to people leave my sessions with it in their mind, and they leave it with, and if they want, they can have it on canvas. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's lovely. I wish I had way more time to go more and delve in that. Thank you very much, Annabelle and Edith. Thank you for everybody who participated. And I'm sorry if we're missing some few comments and questions, because we're now over time. So sorry for the audience who didn't get their questions.
You have so much to say, sorry.
Yes, thank you, everybody. This was a really lovely, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope the audience did as well. And see you next time. We still have one more last session next Wednesday, and it's going to be at 9 p.m. as well, because we're taking consideration of Ramadan timing right now. Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you, Edith. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.